Why don't you talk to that family member anymore? Stole our grandpa's identity, his dad, and ruined him financially. Then when his brother died, tried stealing money from his sister, my mom, and conning his way into things that didn't belong to him. When my mom passed, he asked for her SSN, told me it was for an old insurance policy their brother, referenced above, worth like $400. I told him I wanted more info, looked into it, and it was $76K that he was trying to claim entirely for himself instead of me and my sibling getting my mom's share. Fuck that guy. Edit, it's my uncle. His dad didn't want him to go to prison, so nothing came of the identity theft. Not talking to him is all you're doing? That's pretty light compared to what he deserves. Accused me of stealing all our dad's money when he died. There was a will and we all got the same amount. I pointed this out and she blocked me. I spent all mine at Vegas over a single weekend. How come you get to buy a house and a car with yours? That's not fair. When at my sister's funeral they told me I had no reason to cry because I wasn't really family because I was adopted. I was adopted within my own family. We were still biologically related. The fuck? Even if you weren't bio-related, why would you be criticized for crying? I have a different dad from my sister. When he died, my sister had to leave work. She was so upset, she sobbed and sobbed. My dad was like an uncle to her, but in no way were they related. I was at a funeral for my friend's grandpa. Her cousin, not related to the grandpa, told my friend to stop crying, or you'll make me emotional. And maybe I'll cry. And then everyone will cry. Like what? Her grandpa died. She's allowed to cry. Maybe she was just being an awkward teenager, but that always struck me wrong. At the very least, it was uncouth. My brother, a toxic, dangerous narcissist, robbed my mom into poverty. She sacrificed literally every penny and went even in debt to cover for his lifestyle. Every time I bailed her out, I knew I was funding her toxic relationship with him. When she was finally dying of cancer and having a million other issues and struggles, both my sister, total different long story, and my brother were fucking nowhere to be seen. I stepped in and stepped up to help her out of her misery, making huge sacrifices career-wise, financially getting in debts myself, medical bills through the roof, and her house basically needed entire renovations, let alone mentally of being constantly exposed to extreme hardship and misery of someone you loved the most. Even my big loved one just left me 6 months into this rough situation. Nothing as unsexy as a man struggling, bleeding and suffering to help out a loved one, I guess. Anyway, I carried my mum alone on my own shoulders till her very dying breath, holding her hands while people close to your heart just turned their backs and left you regardless. I showed them nothing but care and loyalty through my entire life. Since the funeral almost day to day now 3 years ago, died first week after New Year, I haven't spoken to any of them. May they all go fuck themselves in eternity. To me they simply do not exist any longer. My sister. She stole approximately $30,000 from my dad and $10,000 from my mom. She got credit cards in my dad's name, too. He eventually had to file bankruptcy. The money she stole from my mom was all her savings that she desperately needed when she was leading an abusive relationship. My parents were far from good parents, but they didn't deserve to have their financial life completely destroyed. I wish those were her only crimes. She was evil from as long as I can remember. She emotionally abused me and put me down for as long as I can remember. I was a sensitive kid, so I sadly believed everything she said. She tried to steal my friends and boyfriends. She ruined my clothes. She put me in unsafe and mature situations that took years of therapy to heal from. Her theft, manipulation, selfishness, and narcissism took so much away from me. There was no money for a first car, college, etc. After she took what she wanted, my dad was a shell of a person, so he couldn't process how hard her actions had been on me, too. I lost all my protectors. I was alone. There's so much more I could share. I sometimes can't believe I experienced what I did because it's so bleak. I stopped all communication with her about 10 years ago, and my life has positively changed as a result. I know she still tries to get friends and family to not like me because I've heard stories. I don't care what she does and I don't care what anyone thinks. I know the truth and the trauma and I'm just happy to be free of her. My wife's mum. Among other things, she attempted to burn down my house, whilst her daughter and grandson were inside. She's a piece of shit who's going to die bitter and alone, and that's just fine by all of her kids. Because he was hitting on the nurse in the room where my mother was being compassionately extubated. Oh yeah, he's my dad. I am so sorry. This sounds like my dad. He cheated on my mother while she was dying of cancer. Would be sexually suggestive to even underage girls and thought it was both normal and hilarious. He did this before, during, and after my mom's death. He is a pervert and a horrible person for so many reasons that only begin here. I tried to forgive him, but I really shouldn't have. I thought there must be a limit to his depravity, but there isn't. When my daughter was 2 years old, I caught him lifting her up in the air and looking under her dress. It was then that I remembered all of the times he would, accidentally, walk in on me in the bath when I was growing up. Part of me wonders if there is anything else I repressed, and part of me never, ever wants to know. You and your mother both deserve better than the kind of person who would do that. They expect me to respect their boundaries but don't respect mine. Boundaries are the most important thing to stay healthy mentally with people close to you. Stay strong. I made the mistake to ignore them, and it almost ruined my life. My wife's mum. Among other things, she attempted to burn down my house, whilst her daughter and grandson were inside. She's a piece of shit who's going to die bitter and alone, and that's just fine by all of her kids. He's a pedophile and a crackhead. Tried to have a semi-normal relationship with him where I would visit him infrequently and message him like once a month. Then one day while visiting him I found pedophilic fan fiction on his computer. He spent my whole life trying to convince me the charges were bogus, lol. He's my dad, BTW. She's a grandiose narcissist who projects all of her negative qualities on any and everyone. When I tried to have a talk about all the abuse I endured as a child, I was swiftly told that everything was my fault. She's attempted to pit my brother and I against each other for most of our lives. The memory that sticks with me was when I was 14, she said she'd make sure I never get to see my brother when we're grown up. My aunt bought Christmas present for my son, not my stepson. I asked politely if we could buy a present for him and say it was from her. She refused. I returned the present unopened. After that, I've barely spoken to her for 20+ years. My grandma, because every time I see her it's super dark and gruesome. Always talking about how she's gonna die and how the politics suck, and how I am a terrible sister, and how I'll never have a husband if I don't gain some weight. How my mom is bossy, how my brother is this and that. I can't stand it. I'm recovering from extreme depression. I can't have negativity on my mind every day when I talk to you.